What's up guys, today I'd love to share with you a story of a regular guy who accidentally became a FIDE Master by following a set of simple rules. And I thought to share it with you because I thought it's going to be relatable and hopefully inspirational for you, alright? So yesterday I've seen this message in the group chat of our company, Remote Chess Academy. The message came from Marcus, and you actually know this guy indirectly, because Marcus edits my videos, including this one. Whenever there is some image popping up or some animation on the board, Marcus is the guy who does that because I don't know much about video editing. And in the recent Chess Olympiad, Marcus scored 7.5 points out of 9 and became a FIDE Master. So let me share with you one of his games that he played, and we can see what are those key ideas that he followed in order to get that great result. Alright, so here is the game. Marcus is playing black against Daniel Kodry, who's playing white, and the white player, by the way, is an experienced guy. He's an international master and a 2-time champion of his country, South Africa, so it's an interesting match. So we got here the French defense. By the way, the fun fact here, Marcus told me that because he doesn't have much time to study chess, and he actually doesn't, he just tried to play some openings that he usually doesn't play because he was always afraid that his opponents will prepare something against him and he doesn't know what to do there. So he played the French defense, which he normally does not even use. And here, after a couple opening moves, so far so good, let me just jump to the point where we have some decision-making themes, c4, knight f6, queen a4, and somewhere at this point, Marcus started playing moves that Stockfish doesn't like, so I assume that Black was kind of making decisions on his own. So here, White attacks this pawn and threatens check, therefore Black plays queen d7, very natural move, although Stockfish doesn't like it for some reason. Here, White played e5, and let's start from here. How would you play here if you're playing Black? Like, the knight is attacked, so probably it needs to move. Where would you put it? Like, here's an interesting thing. I've noticed that in similar situations, most players just drop their piece back to safety, and they go knight g8. And the simple rule that I teach is that in chess, you need to attack. Attacking moves are the best, the strongest. They are the ones that win the game. They're the ones that put pressure on your opponent and force him to react instead of, realizing their own plans. And in order to attack, you need to move forward. That is another thing. You need to move forward to the opponent's side of the board and attack something. That's one of the key ideas about whole chess theme that actually makes it very simple, because usually there are very few moves on opponent's side of the board that you can safely play and attack something, all right? The irony of this situation, by the way, is that Stockfish actually does not like the move knight g4. It suggests going back to g8, and Stockfish has a terrible habit of being always right. Nevertheless, for this case, I definitely would not criticize Marcus. Actually, I would praise him for going forward, because 9 times out of 10, going forward and attacking is the correct solution. And even for me as a grandmaster, it is hard to identify those exceptional situations where you should violate this rule and do something else. So knight g4, I'm perfectly fine with this move. Now, I'd guarded this pawn by going knight f3. Here there is another interesting moment. What would you play here? Now, most players would probably develop their bishop somehow, like to c5, maybe e7, or do anything else. Marcus played rook b8, and that's another move that I like, because it follows another important, very important, and fundamental principle of chess, which is called the principle of the least active piece. In any given position, you can look at the pieces that you have, mainly pieces, not pawns, and ask yourself which one is the least active, and then you just make a move with that piece and put it to a better place. In the current situation, we can see that the queen is doing something. The knight is already horsing around. The bishop is already controlling this diagonal, even though it's still in its original place. So the rooks are actually the ones that are totally passive, and therefore putting the rook here to the semi-open file is definitely a nice idea. Moreover, besides following the principle of the least active piece, it also simultaneously follows the previous rule of the attack, that attacking moves are the best, because rook b8 also creates this threat of rook to b4, threatening queen and pawn. So that's a double attack. And White actually decided to stop that by going pawn to a3. So rook b8, another great move, attack, least active piece, some of the most fundamental, most important principles of chess. And again, let me reinforce this thing. I just talked to Marcus also after he published that message to be sure about his situation. And the interesting thing is, he actually plays chess very infrequently, and he doesn't have much time to study chess. He really doesn't. Right? He just watches the videos, my videos, free videos and paid courses while editing them. And therefore, like, the only thing that differentiates him from the rest is that he knows this simple guideline ideas that he follows because he heard them so many times while editing my videos. And you can see that it works. Because a lot of people believe that in order to play chess well, you need to be that natural prodigy or start playing chess at 3 years old and then learn them and dedicate your life to chess and study right about everything. But you see that it's much easier than that, and a regular guy can achieve quite good results if you just have these proper guidelines. All right, let's move on. Here Black played c5, which is sort of another attacking move, and that follows the idea of neutralization. Now, it's slightly less critical rule, but anyway, it's very helpful. If there is an opponent's piece that is either on your half of the board or attacks you, puts pressure on you, and it feels unpleasant, such as this queen that is putting the pressure down here, and now Black has to guard these pawns. Usually, it's a good idea to neutralize that attacking piece, because it's going to be always inconvenient, and sooner or later, it may lead to troubles. Therefore, it's better to solve this problem sooner. So c5 challenges the queen and forces White to make a decision whether they want to trade or go back. White went back, but both cases are actually fine for Black because they would get rid of that attacking piece. Now Black plays bishop e7, completing development, and here White played the move pawn takes d5. Let me ask you, what do you think about this? Is this a good move, a bad move, or normal move? Now, of course, it does not make or break the game, but fundamentally it is wrong. Now, the real OGs know that to take is a mistake. And in simple terms, it means that you should avoid unprovoked exchanges. That usually makes your opponent's life easier. And in this case, an exchange on d5 is unprovoked. It does not give White any advantages, right? The pawn on c4 has already been guarded. White doesn't have to worry about this. So White should have just did their thing, play h3, castle, do something like that. So instead they traded on d5, which is a very common mistake, probably one of the most common mistakes of all. Again, to take is a mistake. Now Black recaptures, and White plays here h3, kicking the knight out. That's nice. Again, principle of neutralization. Kick out pieces that are on your side of the board. This time White is the one who's using that principle. The knight has only one safe square to go to, knight h6. And here White captured on h6. Now, that's not a good question. Is that wrong because it fails to follow the principle to take as a mistake? And the answer is no, because in this case, White gets something very tangible. White wants to disrupt the pawn chain and ruin Black's pawn structure. Therefore, there is a specific reason, particular advantage that White gets as a result of this trade, and that is perfectly fine to trade. If you trade in order to obtain some advantage or in order to avoid losing something, that is perfectly fine. The rule to take as a mistake applies to situations when it's an unprovoked exchange that doesn't change anything, right? So you should avoid those. Anyways, now both sides castle. Somewhere I've seen that castling is the most common move in chess, so potentially it was played most frequently. I don't know, but maybe. White plays rook d1, putting the rook to this semi-open file, putting pressure. That's nice. And here we're approaching another very interesting and critical situation in chess. In an opening, we know that we need to develop pieces and castle. That's relatively straightforward. What should you do right after that, when you enter the middle game phase? This is the question that confuses a lot of chess players. However, fundamentally, you just keep following same principles. You've got the principle of attack. You should try to attack something on your opponent's side of the board. And in most cases, this is usually either a king or pawns. Why is that so? You cannot truly attack his pieces because they are too mobile. They can easily run away. Therefore, you need a more static object of an attack. That is either a king or, let's say, a pawn. So you try to target those weaknesses. Now, if you can't attack straight away, then you just prepare an attack on the next move. Again, pretty straightforwardly. We also know that besides the attack, we have the principle of the least active piece, which is another universal key that you can apply to any position that you play. You ask yourself, what is the least active piece that I have, and how do I activate it? With that being said, Marcus played rook to b6, which is, I think, an excellent move, because it prepares for Black to stack rooks along the b-file and to hit this pawn, and also to bring their rooks into play, thus following the principle of least active piece. White played rook d2, over protecting this pawn, and Black played a5. Another nice idea, because in order to attack something, you wish it to be stationary. Otherwise, it can run away or be traded off. So without this pawn a5, at some point, White might wish to push the pawn forward and trade it off. So a5 just shuts down this opportunity, so that after this, it's easier for Black to just keep stacking heavy pieces along the b-file and keep attacking this weakness. White played queen c4, which is a very fancy move, of course. It's not a queen sacrifice, because if Black captured here, white would be able to capture on d7. And black correctly avoided this, because if you actually go into this line, that is pretty clear at this point that black missed the class and pawn structures. Therefore, in order to avoid the threat to the d5 pawn, black just pushed it forward. White played rook c1, also a very nice idea, similarly bringing the least active piece into play. And now after rook to b8, hitting the pawn on b2, white can use this rook to guard the pawn on b2, and white is doing really well. Alright, what do you do next? The fun fact, all the same stuff, right? There is not that many fundamental rules that you need to follow. So first of all, you ask yourself, can I go to my opponent's half of the board and attack something? Because if you can, that's the best move to play. In this position, I can't see anything that you can do to attack white immediately. I mean, d3 theoretically, but white can just capture this pawn, it doesn't work. Rook takes b2 theoretically, but in this case, white has guarded this pawn already. That would be just a loss of material. Therefore, there is no attacking move that you can possibly play. Then, this brings you back to the second rule, least active piece. You ask yourself, what is the piece that is doing nothing currently, and how can I move it forward and activate it? In the current position, we can see that rooks are certainly very active, putting pressure down here, and therefore Marcus thought to activate the queen. And then you look at these forward directions, and you ask yourself, how can I move it forward and, facilitate my attack, put some pressure on my opponent. Black played queen f5, which is one of the nice moves. Although it does not create any immediate threats, but nevertheless, in general, it just puts some pressure onto his opponent, and it feels a little bit unpleasant. White played knight e1, which is a very nice maneuver. It is known that a knight is the best blockading piece, because not only it can blockade a passer, but it can also, from there, control a whole lot of squares all around. And knight e1 is actually a positional sacrifice even of a pawn, because after queen takes c5, black could grab a pawn, which he didn't. And here after knight d3, white would have this pretty nice harmony, where the knight is blockading this passer, also hits the queen. Potentially white can grab this pawn on c5, or even keep the situation as it is, just go rook e2 and try to attack there. So that is a pretty nice positional maneuver by white. However, black did not capture this pawn, because he tried to do all the same thing, he wanted to attack. Therefore, black played rook g6. And this is indeed an attacking move, as the rook is now putting pressure down here, and we're now threatening queen takes h3, making use of the pin. Because the pawn on g2 cannot move, therefore queen takes h3 is a real threat. White played queen d3, trying to parry that threat and to offer an exchange of queens. And now, let's have a little test for you. Now, we know the rule to take is a mistake, and black has an opportunity to take here or here. Do you think that one of these moves is correct, or you think that both of them are wrong? What do you think about that? I think that if you actually try to apply these principles as we discuss them, it'll be much more beneficial, because you will actually get them. All right? So, the move queen takes d3 would be a classical example of the rule to take is a mistake. That does not give black any advantage of any kind. It's just an exchange for the sake of an exchange. And these kind of exchanges usually help your opponent. In this case, it would help white to relocate their knight to a better square. Now white is attacking this pawn. Now black needs to worry about this, and white is doing perfectly well. So that is a perfect example of the rule to take as a mistake. By forcing this trade, you did not achieve anything, and you rather helped your opponent to activate his pieces. You should certainly avoid those kind of exchanges. Instead, queen takes c5 certainly does not fall into this rule, because it's not even an exchange. You just grab material. If you can win something, that is excellent. Whether you do this while trading pieces or without an exchange, that's great. If you can win material, that's a little victory for you. Also from here, it hits the knight. Therefore, white played rook e2 to counter that and to attack the queen. The queen goes back, queen c4. White still wants to go back to his setup with a knight on d3, which would indeed be really great for white. All right, now it is black to play, and what would you play here? Again, the universal guideline is to seek attacking moves. You ask yourself, how can I attack? And black played queen to d7, basically renewing the same idea of queen takes h3, making use of the pin. By the way, one of the questions that you guys ask me is, I'm saying that attacking moves are the best, but in an opening phase, usually you need to develop. So how do you balance these two ideas, like in an opening phase, development and attack? And the answer is pretty simple. You can attack if you do that together with development. If you develop a piece and attack, that's great. While if you run around with the same piece, with that one move threats, that's usually bad. In the middle game, it's easier. Your pieces are normally already developed, and then you just look for attacking moves. So here white played knight d3, also pretty cool, which brings us to the fifth and also extremely important rule, which I call the anti-blunder check, which means that once your opponent played a move, you gotta take a second to ask yourself, what is the idea? What is he going to do next? That makes sure that you avoid blunders. Because knight d3 actually not just blockaded this pawn, that actually caused a major threat of knight going to e5, with a massive fork to the queen, the rook, and this pawn on f7, because white also has got the queen targeting from c4. So knight e5 would be a really bad threat. Moreover, if black tried queen takes h3, which looks brilliant at first, like you grab the pawn, you make use of the pin, you attack the king, everything's great, but that would actually blunder the move knight to f4, with this also very interesting triple function of attacking these two pieces as well as guarding the pawn on g2. Again, I gotta give credit to the white player, he played really good chess here. Therefore, instead of this, black played bishop d6 to take control of these two squares so that it's not that easy for the white knight to jump there. Then white played king h1 just to not be afraid of this queen takes h3 due to the pin. White moves away from the pin. And what do you do next? Again, all the same thing. You see that chess is a simple game if you know the most fundamental, most important ideas. You ask yourself, can I attack right away? If yes, you do that. If not, you just ask yourself, how do I bring my pieces forward so that I prepare and attack on the next move? All right, so black played queen f5, putting the queen back to an active position. And although there are no threats right now, the situation is very unpleasant for white, I would say, because they can't really do much. Right now they're holding the situation, but like their king is a little bit uncomfortable. The knight can't go away because the pawn will then push. The queen cannot go away because it has to guard this knight on d3. So it's quite already annoying for white. Anyway, he played pawn f3, which also is a fairly nice move. Now his both rooks are involved into the defense of his king side, and therefore it feels totally safe here. Also, the knight on d3, oops, not this, has this really nice positioning where it controls all the holes that black could potentially wish to use with his queen. So f3, nice defensive move. And now black played king h8. At this point, we can see that these three pieces are already active. They're putting pressure and to some extent, taking part into the attack, but the rook on b8 is currently doing nothing, and therefore it is the least active piece. Yes, theoretically it is on the semi-open file, but the pawn on b2 is overprotected so many times that there is no real attack there. That's why black played king h8, trying to stack rooks along the g file and attack there. White tried to stop this by going rook e4, and now after rook g8, now there is this unpleasant pressure to the g2 pawn, and white played rook g4. By the way, let this also be a little puzzle of the day. What if white played knight e1 trying to guard the pawn this way? What would you play as black? If you can find the answer, please write it down in comments below. In the actual game, white wanted to neutralize this pressure by going rook g4 himself, but after this, black traded on g4. By the way, how do you find attacking moves? That's another very practical question. You focus your attention on opponent's half of the board and ask yourself, how do you go there and take or attack something? That's like tactically how you find attacking moves. And again, it makes things easy because usually you have very few moves that you can possibly play on your opponent's half of the board. All right, so here we've got rook takes g4, and after pawn takes, there was a move that white player missed, rook takes g4. Black actually sacrificed the rook, and it turned out that white cannot capture it, because if white accepted the sacrifice, that would fail to queen h1 checkmate. And of course it's now very sad for white because they lost a pawn, plus that pawn on h3 is no longer covering the king. Therefore white is sort of in trouble. Nevertheless, white played knight takes c5, and he's still trying to find chances. And here at this point black played another nice move, queen e5, creating the threat of queen h2 check or queen e1, and although white could theoretically capture this rook on g4, that would fail to one of these checkmates. And at this point white resigned. Ultimately, black played in 96.2% accuracy game, which would already make Kramnik rage, by just following those few fundamental chess principles. And I hope that this example is inspirational. As somebody who does not play chess often, does not even study chess really, can become a FIDE Master, while I know some of you guys question whether you can reach 1800 or so. Alright, so if you are not sure how to progress in chess, or you don't have much time to allocate for chess, I've put together a special bundle called Boost Your Elo to 2000, where I've included the most efficient techniques and a clear roadmap that you can just follow to get to that next level. If you're interested, you can get it by clicking the link below the video in the description, and I'll talk to you soon.